Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Brit Talks 2017. It is a fantastic honour to have everyone here in the room with us, students from across Kosovo, to have everyone following us on Facebook Live, and to the viewers of Klan Kosova. A warm welcome to now the second edition of Brit Talks in Kosovo as part of our celebrations for Her Majesty the Queen's birthday. It is probably my favourite day of the year in Kosovo for Brit Talks and for the Queen's birthday party, not least because for once I get to give speeches in English, which is just that little bit easier for me than in Albanian or Serbian. It is really great to see everyone here today on the second edition of Brit Talks, which are becoming a little bit of a tradition for us here in Kosovo. The idea behind Brit Talks is not only stolen from other people who've done things like this, but is deeper than that. We want to celebrate on our Queen's birthday the things that make us proud about our country, our communities and our culture, in a way that I hope is going to be interesting, informative, and perhaps, yes, even a little inspirational for the people in the room. And this year, one of the parts of our culture that we want to celebrate is that culture of volunteerism. It's so important for the people of Britain, and indeed for the royal family, this idea that if there's a problem or an activity or a desire, that each citizen is empowered and has the ability to go and make that change with his or her own work. They can go out, they can organise something, and they can honestly do it themselves without waiting for anyone. It's something that comes naturally to us, I think. I'm not saying that every person in Britain is out there giving all of their time volunteering, but it is something that binds our communities together and is an expectation. And we have the real honour to have three people here to talk today about their experiences, about their own, what it means to them, volunteerism, perhaps give you some ideas, and I hope maybe at the end of these 2 hours, some of the people listening with us will be inspired to think, you know, I can do the same thing. I just want to thank, before we kick off, everyone here today. I want to thank all of the sponsors for the Queen's birthday celebrations in Kosovo in 2017, in particular our gold sponsors, Banco per Business and Meridian Corporation. I want to thank the faculty for hosting us yet again in this beautiful location today. And I'd like to thank everyone in particular who's taking the time to listen with us today to a little bit of British culture here in Kosovo. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn the microphone over to our first speaker, because frankly, you've all heard ambassadors speak just that little bit too much. Robert Wilson is one of the founders of the Ideas Partnership, a fantastic organisation that does work not just with and to communities, but through communities, empowering people through that culture of volunteerism to make the difference themselves, to build their own lives, and to be the change that they want to see. Rob has long experience in this part of the world and is a long friend of Kosovo, having been involved from 2006 and even earlier, and is now working with the OSCE in Albania. But it gives me great pleasure to invite Rob Wilson on stage.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And it seems, most importantly, that the magic Madonna-style Star Wars microphone is working. I feel a little bit like a TV chef. We'll see how that works. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today, to take part in, to be part with you of this extraordinary initiative which the British Embassy in Pristina has started. I love, above all, the sense that it's a shared activity, bringing together not just Britain and the ideas that Britain has brought to Kosovo, but Kosovars above all, and the experiences of Kosovars. And it builds on the long relationship between the two countries. Now, I was thinking in the car on the way up about what to say, and Ambassador Rory and I had spoken a bit before about this, and he said he didn't want a lecture, a big theoretical discussion of what is volunteerism or what is charity. He said, just talk about yourself. I said, well, marvellous. I love to talk about myself. That's great. So I'm here to talk about myself for about 20 minutes, and then for a change, we'll move to questions, and you can talk about me instead, and that'll be equally nice. But for the first 20 minutes, we'll see what we come up with to talk about on the theme of volunteerism. And I didn't bring up many ideas in the car today, but I did bring three items which I'm going to put out here, and we'll see if they usefully prompt me to say anything. The first thing to emphasize, if I'm going to talk about myself for so long, and if we're going to talk about volunteerism, what that means. This is not about being good. I have to tell you, as the first key message, I don't think of myself as a specially good person. I think I'm approximately normal. I like normal things. I like pizza and films and sitting on the sofa. I am not a specially good person in that sense. This talk, this day, is not about being good and about you being more good. What it is about, I hope, is being human. And I may not be particularly good, but I am reasonably human, and I have a strong sense looking at you all that you're all essentially human as well. So I think we have a very good basis for a conversation about volunteerism today. So, me and volunteering. I'm going to start too many years ago, not exactly 40 years ago, but about probably 35 years ago. I must have been 6 or 7. And in our village, a small village in the southeast of England, every autumn there was a special festival for the harvest, for not Corric the month, but Corric the Coria. And there was a tradition in our village that families would go into their cupboards and would find food maybe they didn't need or could spare, and the children would go and visit some of the older people in the village, maybe old people who were living on their own or maybe didn't have a pension, and we would share some food with them. And it was a very simple, very local bit of charity, which we were basically just told to do by our parents, and we thought it was kind of unusual. You go and knock on a strange person's door and give them food, but that was what we did in our village. And for the first time, as a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, it helped me to think about someone else. An old lady would, she opened the door, and I explained why I was there, my friend and I, and we explained why we were there, and we offered her, we said, we collected this for you. And she invited us in and said, thank you. And I thought for the first time about someone who was very different to me, someone who was maybe 70 years older than me, in a different circumstance, someone who was living alone, someone who didn't have a family. And that was the start of a process for me of thinking about other people outside, people different to me. The second thing I was thinking about in the car on the way up today was something else we did in my village. And I guess I must have been about 10 or 11 or 12 when we were doing this. In the middle of our village, very traditional English village, which I'm sure you've all seen on the soap operas or whatever, when you're following the ambassador on his Facebook page and he's showing traditional pictures of England. In our traditional village, there was a pond, very, very small lake in the middle of the village, just about the size of this room. And it was quite disgusting. It was full of kind of old shoes and mess. But one year we decided we would clean it. And so lots of people from the village got together and we pulled out all of the rubbish from the pond, all the dirty old grass and the old shoes, and we cleaned the pond. And it was, when we first thought about it, kind of a disgusting idea, cleaning this old pond, and a strange way to spend a Saturday. But it was kind of fun, because we were all doing it together, me and my friends in the village and some of the adults. And that got me thinking about us as a village, as a community. We had this shared place in the middle of our village, this body of water, this pond that was kind of, the pub was next to it and the shop was next to it. And we'd all come together to kind of help the community out. And that was a new idea for me when I was 11. And the third thing I was thinking about in the way up this morning was when I was a bit older at school, and one of my teachers, I must have been about 17, one of my teachers was the friend of a teacher in another school in the centre of London. And this was a school in a very a poor district, an impoverished district of London, and working with younger children, often from very poor backgrounds. And my teacher arranged that some of her students, like me, would go to this school in London, and as older students we would help some of the younger students with some reading. And to be honest, when it was first suggested, we thought, great, an afternoon out of school, that's brilliant. But then we went to this school in London and we started working with these younger children. And when I first did that, that was a strange experience. Didn't know exactly how to do it, didn't know how to talk to younger children, but it was kind of fun because not only was I meeting some different people from a different background, but also I found that in a very, very small way, I had something to offer. In a small way, I could help these younger children. And I was kind of an average boy. I'd grown up, like I say, with the same usual average interests and habits and egoism of a teenager. And this idea that I could help a smaller child, that was amazing. That was new for me. So those are my three experiences from my youth, which I was thinking about in the car on the way up here today when I wanted to answer this question of the ambassadors about what was my very, very first experience of volunteering. What then happened, and I'm going to jump forward quite a few years to 2006, is that my life changed very, very significantly and rather unexpectedly, in that I got the chance to come and live and work here in Kosovo, which was, I have to say, and I'm not just being nice to you all, it was an extraordinary, wonderful experience and genuinely life-changing and genuinely opened my mind. The then Deputy Ambassador of the British Embassy, in those days British office in Pristina, a very, very young, very junior diplomat called Rory O'Connell, he invited me out to go and work with the government of Kosovo and to help them become more of a government. And so I came with my partner Elizabeth to Kosovo, and it was the first time I had lived in another country, and it was the first time I had been out of England for more than a month at a time. And my perspective, my horizon, opened out beyond my imagination. I had never been in a place like Kosovo. And let's face it, Kosovo is not so very different from England. Most things are very, very similar, but still for me, from a very narrow experience, my eyes were opened. And I met new people, interesting people, people who were different to me but were very welcoming, people who had lots of things in common with me, They spoke my language happily. They were keen to teach me their language. You and your families were eating similar foods to me, and we liked similar music, and we had same references in films or clothes. But Kosovo was a different culture to mine, and I got the chance to explore it and to understand people, to think about people from a different perspective. In particular, back in 2006, it was even clearer than it is today, the terrible experiences you and many of your families had gone through in very, very recent times. And the physical and the psychological suffering was still very clear. And all of this made me think. And I had a day job, so to say, working in Çeviri, but also my partner and I started to explore Kosovo. And as I say, it was life-changing, this experience. For me, the friendliness of Kosovo, the vitality of the people and the culture and the hospitality and this food which was expanding my body as fast as my mind was expanding every day. This was marvelous to me and exciting, and for me Kosovo became a synonym for possibility and new experience. And Elizabeth and I started to explore this wonderful new place, and we started to get involved with different activities, different projects, and we started to volunteer in very small ways. Elizabeth discovered by accident the Shpije the Museo Etnografik, just round the corner from here, and she got talking to the Cicerone, the guides there. And they got friendly, and she was asking about the museum, and they said how they wanted to develop, and they were interested to give tours for foreigners. And so Elizabeth taught them English and then supported them doing some open days in the museum one summer. And I, because I do some writing as a kind of a hobby, I decided that I would organize a writing competition for young people in Kosovo. And that gave me the chance to visit different towns in Kosovo and to talk to the writing groups there and to learn about them and to hear about them and to meet these old guys who are these legendar shkrimtar, and lots of young people whose creativity was still fresh and who were trying to escape the shkrimtar legendar. Elizabeth decided she wanted to promote a kula in Dranoc, in Dukajin in the west, as a place for tourism. She and a friend ran a series of workshops in Akula just to invite foreigners, to show foreigners what Kosovo was like, and maybe to show the people of Dranoc what their cultural heritage could be like as an economic resource for their future. I helped out a local charity which works with victims and potential victims of trafficking and domestic violence. I helped them draft a funding proposal. Tiny, tiny, tiny things that I found myself doing, and we found ourselves doing, just because we found them. We met these people, we met these experiences in this extraordinary place. We met other humans and wanted to do something with them because we recognized them as people like us and people we wanted to work with. And that I guess was what eventually led to the Ideas Partnership, which, as the ambassador mentioned, is a charity we founded with a Kosovar friend, Ardi, in 2009. And has been growing and growing and growing ever since, and is now, I think, the third largest, certainly one of the largest volunteer organizations in Kosovo. And that started from that same inspiration. And it also started from a shoe. And I shall explain why it started with the shoe. So we had, through a long chain of circumstances that also involved an environmental summer camp in the Grukie Rugovos, we ended up visiting one day Lagia Nizetetet, neighborhood 28 of Kosova, which, as some of you may know, is predominantly an Ashkali, Egyptian mainly, a few Roma, district of Kosova. And as some of you will know, neighborhood 28 is a little bit different to some of the center of Pristina. The men of neighborhood 28 earn money, such as it is, by going through the bins for tin cans and plastic. And if you, I forget what the prices change over time, but if you collect a kilogram of empty metal, it was, I forget how many cents, how many euro cents it was, but if you worked really hard for a full day collecting tin cans and plastic, the families would earn a couple of euros. And that was their life. And that was something which, for me, was completely different, an experience I could not imagine. But now I'd met a family of Ashkali from Kosova, Agron and his wife Hatemia and their children. And we actually bumped into them in the street. And Agron was there with his two sons. And Elizabeth, my partner, is a teacher, and she's very passionate and enthusiastic about teaching. And she said, well, why, it's nice to meet you, why aren't your children in school? And Agron was a bit surprised, understandably. And he said, well, because they don't have any shoes to go to school. And I confess that our first reaction inside was, nonsense. That's not a reason for children not to go to school. That can't be true. So Elizabeth made a deal with Agron. She said, okay, I'm going to buy your two boys a pair of shoes each from the mini market in the center of Kosova, and we'll see if you send your sons to school. And a week later, she was back in Kosova, and she visited their house, and the two boys showed her their school books. And again, we had to open our minds, because this was something I could not have dreamed. That there could be people, there could be children living 5 minutes from where I was living at that time, for whom a shoe was the difference between being stuck at home with limited employment possibilities, stuck at home, and still today something like 95% of the Ashkali and Egyptian and Roma community in Kosovo do not finish regular mandated education. 95% don't complete compulsory education. The difference between not education and education was a shoe. And so we started working with this community in Kosova. And partly what we did was we encouraged friends and family around Pristina or in the UK to send us any shoes when their children grew out of them. I guess maybe you've got younger brothers and sisters, they grow out of shoes every 6 months. There are, in England, lots of babies' shoes that are being useless every 6 months. We would bring these to Kosovo. That was part of it. We also found that one of the boys' sisters wasn't going to school because there was some, frankly, ridiculous interpretation of a law by the Comuna, by the Bashkia, which said that if a child hadn't started school by a certain age, then they would only be allowed to start school if they could pass a test. It's quite hard to pass a test if you've not been to school. You understand the problem. So we started partly working with the municipality to try to explain to them why this was kind of ridiculous, and working with the school to accept the children, and getting diplomatic support from the British Embassy and others to lobby the municipality and the ministry to change this. But also, we started running activities on Saturdays in Kosova, and initially, in fact, days during the week, to help young children with very, very basic education. That's where the book came from. With their reading, with their writing, with their English, with their Albanian, with their maths. Most of this work was done and is done by volunteers. It started with these two crazy English people wandering around the Mahala, being welcomed in by these very generous families who had, for me, literally nothing. They had literally nothing, but they were welcoming us into tea. And then it was a Kosovar friend, and it was then a young Kosovar who came to start helping us out. And then it was the niece of the British ambassador who was here on our holidays, and she came and helped us out. And then it was another Kosovar friend. And bit by bit, this network of people grew who had come to Pristina and then went to Kosova and met these fellow humans and wanted to work with them, were inspired to work with them. And that's how the Ideas Partnership grew. And over time, we found that it wasn't just the shoes, and it wasn't just some reading, but we also had to think about the situation of their parents. When your only earnings come from recycling metal and plastic, you need more money, and that's why you will see Ashkali children, Roma children at the crossroads begging, because their money is essential for their family economy. When we started a social enterprise, making lavender bags and recyclable cloth bags, reusable cloth bags, so that the parents could earn money through their own handwork, we made a deal with them that they would be part of the project if they sent their children to school. So the children went to school. We understood that healthcare was part of the problem. There were children who were simply too sick to go to school, or who hadn't had the basic vaccinations. And so we arranged that through friends as well. And as an organization, as we understood the community more and more, as we got to know the people of Kosova more and more, we met them, we thought about them, we learned about them, we learned about each other. We understood more and more the network of problems that keeps families in poverty and keeps children out of education. And so that's why our project grew, and we got into healthcare and support for new mothers, and working with girls, young girls, to stop them, hopefully, or to give them alternatives to early marriage, to give them inspirational role models as young girls, so maybe they think about growing up to be effective, to be professional women, so they grow up having a sense of their own choices as women. We have volunteers still from the UK who come out and work with us. We have some who come onto Skype every week, and they read stories with the children in Kosova over Skype. In lots of different ways, lots of different volunteers in Kosovo and the UK are working with us. And these communities in Kosovo and back in the UK have got to know each other even more strongly. And that all grew from this first experience of each other. Elizabeth and I did not go into Kosova saying, today we're going to be good, today we're going to do something good. We were just visiting, and then we were visiting a family, and then we got to know them a bit. And we started to think more and more about their experience as fellow humans and our what we could do with them, simply because we are human. And that was the Ideas Partnership story. That's the growth which has taken us to one of the largest volunteer organizations in Kosovo, still active today. Many of our volunteers are now Kosovars, particularly young Kosovars, who have now got a different and new experience of what Pristina is like. They've seen Kosova and they want to help. Like me with the old people I met in my village, they're thinking about people different for themselves. Like me with the community cleaning the lake in my village. These young Kosovars are thinking about their community and what it means and how it can be strong. What's also happening now, and this is something which the ambassador just mentioned, the community in Kosova is now helping itself. Many of them on a volunteer basis. They are working now as volunteers to help their own community. They are doing a community cleanup, like I was doing 35 years ago. They are organizing activities to look after their old people. This is a community looking after itself. And to go back to where we started, this is not because I am particularly good, because I encourage you to be particularly good or differently good or more good than you already are. This is because we are human. This, as humans, is how we are. This, as humans, all of us, as one enormous, extraordinary community, bringing together Britain and Kosovo. This is who we are. Thank you.
Rob, thank you very much for that. I found it fascinating, and I think the exhortation to be human and to make those human connections really sticks with me. This isn't about being good or being better, it's just being who we are. I think we have a couple of minutes for questions about this or anything else that you might like to ask Rob. So I'm looking out and seeing who's going to be the bravest first person, you know, and show the courage. There's a hand right at the back, and I can't see who it's attached to, but when he or she stands up, we will see.
Queer.
So, first of all, I would like to thank you for all the help that you have done to Kosovo community with Ashkale and Kosova and before that. But we as young people in Kosovo would like to know, like, how can we implement ourselves in your help in your voluntary work, because we want to be volunteers as well, but
Marvellous. Very good question. Excellent question. The secret question of the day, and I'm very glad you asked it. How can you help? What can you do as young Kosovars, aware of your own community, passionate about humanity and wanting to be members of a community? Let me say a couple of things. One thing you are extremely welcome to do is to come and volunteer with the Ideas Partnership. Come and talk to me, come and talk to our little team in Pristina who coordinate our work in Kosova and elsewhere. We would be delighted to get new volunteers any time. And as I say, we have a growing cadre of young Kosovars. I also encourage you, listen to the two other presentations that you're going to hear in a little while from two other organisations also doing amazing work, inspirational work, and maybe their work inspires you and you go and talk to them. That would be equally brilliant. Because in the end, it's not actually about, this isn't the Ideas Partnership Day. I'm happy we're here. I'm grateful that we're here. I think we're doing great things with Kosovo. This isn't really about the Ideas Partnership. This is about how you respond to your community. The simplest advice I can give you is step outside your front door and look at your world and respond to what you see. I'm not going to tell you to that you have to go and help the poor children of Kosova. I think it's a good cause. I'm not going to tell you that you must go and follow the speakers you're going to hear in a second, though they are also good causes. I'm not going to tell you that you have to go and help people in Africa or India or round the corner. Respond to your world. When you see something in your world, and maybe it's the other side of Europe, or maybe it's in the house next door, when you see something, a situation, and you think, that's not right, respond to it. Follow your own instincts. And that's being human, and that's volunteerism, and that's charity. Oh, well.
Right, folks, I'm going to pull this first session to a close. I want to thank my friend Rob for everything he's been doing in Kosovo, but also for joining us today and sharing that, and for washing the shoe before he brought it out of the bag. I'm close to it. I can guarantee it does not smell bad. So we will be moving now into a traditional English cream tea. For those of you watching at home, I'm sorry, but you can imagine that it tastes very nice. But do stick with us if you're on Facebook Live, because we will have some more goodies and interviews for you, and we will start again in 15 minutes with the main event. So Rob, once again, a round of applause. Thank you very much. Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Brit Talks 2017. We've got off to a fantastic start with Rob Wilton, and we're now going to turn to our second speaker, who is a proud daughter of Kosovo. Johanna Gjurgjala studied for many years in the UK, we are proud to say, but her experience with volunteerism goes deeper than that, from her time as a young person in Kosovo, perhaps in maybe one of the hardest times for volunteers and for civil society. It is a great honour to invite her, now the executive director of the Toka organisation here in Kosovo, to tell a little bit about her experience, her journey, if you like, through volunteerism, and to share with us the things that she's learned and observed along the way. So, Johanna, please, you're more than welcome.
Thank you. Hi. I'm just going to make sure that we've got something on. Yes, we do. It's a little bit tough to come after Robert, because it was a very, very inspirational speech. But I'm hoping to add another perspective that hopefully will connect a little bit more with you. And my message today for you is going to be very simple. Volunteering changes lives. And you may think, a little bit like the story that Robert was telling, that it's changing other people's lives. In fact, the main message of today is that it can change yours. Now, maybe I am already speaking to people who believe in that. Otherwise, maybe you wouldn't be here today. Toka, the organization that I lead, did a survey, an online survey about a month ago, and asked people about volunteerism. About 700 people replied, and over 80% of them said that they're interested in volunteering, and that's a great thing. I'm sure some of you belong in that group. The thing is that another thing that came out from the survey, and also something that I see sometimes when I speak to young people like yourselves, is that volunteerism is somehow not taken that seriously. It's something you do in your free time, and a little bit like what Robert was saying, it's something that you do to make yourself feel good. Okay, you do your studies, you hang out with your friends, you have your coffees, and then if there's some time left, you do a bit of volunteering, and it's a nice feeling. Okay, I'm here today to try and convince you to take volunteering very seriously. And I'm going to say something that you might find maybe a little bit controversial, but I think it's important, and hopefully I will prove this to you with a story that I will tell you, that volunteerism can actually be maybe even more important than your studies. Of course, having a degree is important. Of course, studying is important. But if you dedicate yourself and really commit yourself to volunteering, it can change your life. Okay? Now, it's a big statement. I don't know how many of you, actually, let's do a quick show of hands. How many of you have thought about where you will be in 20 years' time? You'll be somewhere around your 40s? Okay. All right. So it seemed like about a third of the room had thought about this. I want you today to think about this. Where do you want to be in 40 years' time? And I don't have a time machine to take you 20 years from now for you to see yourself where you will be in 20 years' time. But I'm going to try a different time machine today. Today, I'm going to take you 20 years back, okay? I'm going to take you 20 years back to tell you a story of probably one of the first youth organizations in Kosovo, an organization that I belong to called the Post-Pessimists. I don't know if anybody of you have heard of it. Has anybody heard of the Post-Pessimists? Okay, not many. A lot of people in the front row, so pay attention. Let me take you back to the 20 years ago. This was in the mid-1990s. You're going to see a few pictures, I hope, of what it looked like. No, it was pretty analog, no digital age, no internet, no smartphones, nothing. You see a picture on the left, right, of Pristina. You see this is where the Grand Hotel is, and this was like a funny little garden before. Now you have this sort of stage. You've probably seen some of these pictures of students studying in houses, and over there at the top there's a picture of me with my girlfriends in Korizi in Pristina, looking pretty uncool, as most of us did in the 1990s. I'm sure most of you know something about the 1990s. Your parents were alive, they've probably told you. I can tell you that as a 15-year-old, in 1995 I was 16, okay? As a 15-year-old who was curious, who had energy, who wanted to do things, being in Pristina and in Kosovo at that time was, imagine yourself a little bit in a desert. You in a desert, and maybe a policeman somewhere out there, but there was nothing. You wanted to go to the library, you couldn't go. I'm speaking as an Albanian at the time, right? If you wanted to go to the cultural center, Borames, you couldn't go. If you wanted to go to the swimming pool, the sports facilities, you couldn't go. All you had was endless amounts of time in your hands and cafes. And there was no internet, and there was no smartphones, and there was no way of overcoming that isolation. So I can appreciate that a lot of you today sometimes may feel hopeless and may feel like it's tough. You may feel like you're alone, like you want to do things, but there's no way to do it. Imagine that time. Try and put yourself 20 years from now in a situation where my parents, my mom and dad are over there in the back, and my mother was fired, like many parents were. My father was demoted, and he earned 10 Deutschmarks a month when he earned it. We didn't really know when we would have money. And the books were not in Albanian, that was it. And in the whole of that context, if you think it's comparable to your life today, imagine being afraid. Imagine being, actually, every time you step out of your home, not knowing what will happen. Okay? And in that desert, in that quite scary desert sometimes, there was actually a group of young people that came together. And that group of young people was called the Post-Pessimists. Imagine, middle of the 90s. The worst was yet to come. Very optimistic name for the time, but we didn't care. And I think in a way it showed our spirit. What you see here is a funny way. This is a newspaper, and you can see the date here. It's December 1995. And believe it or not, there's some famous people in that picture. I'm not going to tell you who they are. You can try and guess. I'll help you a little bit in a minute. There was this group of 15, 20 teenagers, high school, not even students like yourself. You're adults. You even have more power and more autonomy over your life. We got together and we started doing things. We started organizing workshops, we started organizing exhibitions, and we started publishing this monthly youth newspaper with the same name. And I cannot tell you what it was like. It's suddenly, my life was full. I was learning things. I was with very smart people. We were doing stuff. We were trying things we've never done before. And over time, we felt like, at least for a certain circle around us, there was life. Suddenly, people were engaged. They had a place to come to. They had a place to contribute. And for me, it changed my life. It gave me, it infected me with a desire to make an impact in society, because very, very early in my life, I learned that I can. Okay? And I want to come back to the story of, I'm going back 20 years. And I'm going to try and take you now to where some of these people are today. So this is the editorial page of the newspaper, so where you see the editors and the contributors. And you can scan through this list of names and try and see if you can recognize some of them. I will help you, and we will start with a few of the names that are on this list. Now, there are many, many more, but I have space for only 6 people on this slide, so I will try and give you a bit of an introduction of where they are today. So they started 20 years ago in the Post-Pessimists. It was probably not their only volunteering thing, but it was one. And today, Besnik Pulja is an assistant professor at Virginia Tech in the United States. On the completely other side of the spectrum, you have Arta Dobroshi, who is obviously a famous actress in Kosovo and outside of Kosovo. You have 2 very, very known media personalities. You have Jeta Gjara, who is the director of Brit in Kosovo, and probably most of you have seen her weekly show, Jeta në Kosovë. And then you have Agron Bajrami, who is the editor-in-chief of Koha Editore. In the magazine that I have with me, which was published in 1996, this is an article from Agron about the Kosovo rock scene at the time. So, a rocker at heart. Then we have Garentina Kraja, who is at the moment a lecturer at the American University in Kosovo, and she was with President Atifete Jahjaga as her senior policy advisor and speechwriter for the time that she was president. And finally, we have Fisnik Abrashi, who is making us proud in Prague, where he is the news director for Central and Eastern Europe for Associated Press, which is one of the biggest news agencies in the world. So I took you back 20 years ago, and I'm now bringing you to today, and these are some of the names of the people, and this is where they are today. Okay? And I'd like you to try and imagine if you can have a picture here 20 years from now. If you want to, and I'm coming back to the main point that I made in the beginning, volunteering can change your life. But you have to take it seriously. It changed my life, and this is a bit of color about why I am here today and what is my British connection. Volunteering changed my life in 2 very important ways. One was that through the Post-Pessimists, I got this desire to serve. And then I also, it was the way that I gained the opportunity to go to the UK and study. So on the left is a picture of my school. It was a private school in Northern England. Then I did both my undergraduate and my master's degree at the London School of Economics and Political Science. It's one of the most renowned universities in the UK and in the world. My last job was at Expedia, which is a huge 10,000 employees American corporation, where in the 7 years that I worked there, I was promoted 4 times. And I'm also a British citizen. And the reason why I'm telling you this is very simple. I'm here in Kosovo today not because I couldn't make it in the West. I can go back anytime I want. And trust me, I left a significantly more, certainly materially, rewarding life to come back to Kosovo. I'm here not because I have to be, I'm here because I want to. And it may seem strange to you. And I understand, I was in my 20s not so long ago, and I also wanted to explore the world. And it's absolutely valid, and it really, yeah, it opens your horizons. But the reason why, for me, it was always, I always knew I wanted to come back to Kosovo were two experiences. One was the post-pessimists. My mother, who is sitting over there, she's a doctor. And before I joined the post-pessimists, I thought I was going to be a doctor. And then I got involved in this active youth movement, and I was doing things and I was learning things. And when I saw the impact it could make, I became basically converted. And ever since I left, I spent almost 15 years in the UK and other countries, and it was all for me training and education to come back to Kosovo and make a difference here. It might seem strange to you, I don't know. I hope that at least for some of you, you will think differently in 20 years' time, but we'll see. But the reason for me is very simple. In Kosovo, you can really make an impact. If you're a pessimist, you'll think it's a pretty awful place to be. If you're an optimist, it's a land of opportunity. Literally anything you touch in Kosovo, you can make better. And that's really empowering, okay? The other experience that was very important for me, which then, as I was thinking about the time when I wanted to come back, what I'm going to do was the Scouts. I don't know if you've heard of the Scouts. The Scouts is a huge international organization that works with young people, informal education, outdoor education, community service. And it also was very transformative for me when I did that in the UK and the US. And when I decided to come back to Kosovo, Post-Pessimist, a youth organization, the Scouts, a youth organization, I decided to focus what I wanted to do in the field of youth. And that's how Toka was born. And I'm not going to say very much about Toka at all. I just want to show you a picture of some of our team. And we had our 2-year birthday this month, in fact. And the reason why I'm showing you this picture is because half of the people in this picture started off as volunteers or in interns. Not necessarily just with Toka, but they decided that they want to think beyond just themselves and do something that they cared about, and it has taken them on a journey that seems very rewarding for them. I think most of them look very happy. We work with hundreds of young people every month, and we see the impact that we're having in their lives, and it really is worth waking up for every day. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Because I'm interested how many of you think you're you feel a bit like the cat. The lion is stuck in a mirror and you don't find an ability to reach your potential. I'm hoping that with the examples that I gave you, you can hopefully feel that there is more that you can do, that it's not that hopeless, that you can be the one that can make a change. 2 things to say. If it's hard today, think about what it was like 20 years ago. And if you still are not convinced, let's see if I can go back. These guys are your peers. You maybe studied with some of them. Some of them are still students. And they are doing something today. And I think they're going places. So, if I've convinced you, then the question is, now what, right? And I totally get it. Where do I fit in this? Well, I think Robert made some very good points earlier, so I'm not going to try and repeat. In fact, we tend to agree a lot. But the formula, as far as I'm concerned, is very simple. The first thing is you find your passion. And I think you were saying something along the lines of look around you, or you know, just step outside your front door. And it's the same sort of advice you will get from me. Even as you leave today and you go home, or you go to your university, or whatever you do, just pay attention. Look around you. What bothers you? What irritates you? What frustrates you? I don't know, it could be a broken chair that you end up sitting every time you go to class. It could be, I don't know, rubbish that gathers because the bin is small, not big enough. It could be something else. It could be a neighbor of yours that is, I don't know, just rude and doesn't say hello and good morning and good evening. There could be all sorts of things that irritate you, and they make your life less good. Find that passion. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Just find what really you're passionate about and take the first step. The second thing, find allies. Find out if anybody's doing something about the problem that you care about. If people don't, nobody's doing something about it, which I think in Kosovo a lot of things are being done. It's just a question of finding out. But if nobody's doing something about it, talk to your friends. See if anybody else is irritated by the same thing that irritates you. Try and find who else could be supportive. One of the most beautiful things about volunteering is that you can connect with other people that have your cause, that care about you, the same thing, that are maybe not people that you would meet normally. And that's great. Your world gets much bigger. And then, do it well. This is very, very important. One of the biggest risks of the story that I'm telling you is that you think, you know, if you do some volunteering work, you'll meet some people, you get some references on your CV, and, you know, I'll get a nice job, and that's it. I'm settled for life. Please do not make that mistake. I'm not saying don't do it, I'm not saying there's no value, but just like you're not fools, the people that you will try to impress are not fools either, and they will see through that. So please, whatever you choose to do, do it well. That's why it's important to find your passion. Do something that you care about. And if you do it well, I promise you, you will not regret it. Then, we live in Kosovo. So I could completely understand that you might be thinking, but what if it doesn't work? We are in Kosovo. If it would work all the time, it would be maybe called Sweden. I'm not going to say Britain. I've been there too long. I know public transport. But coming back, if it doesn't work, if it's not perfect, it's okay. Now, what you do is your choice. I would say keep trying. Really, really keep trying. Because, at least in the world, according to Jehona, even 0.1 is better than 0. It's moving in the right direction. And if you keep trying, if you stop and think, what didn't work with that one? Was it the people I was allied with? Was it the goal very ambitious? Was my approach the wrong one? Maybe maybe it's the wrong project. Maybe it's something else that might work better. If you sit and you think about what, and you learn from your experience, you can make a difference and you can make it better. So what would then happen is that the 0.1 becomes 1, and then becomes 2, and then it becomes 3, 5, 10, and hopefully in 20 years' time, you can stand here telling a group of students how volunteering changed your life. Thank you.
Johanna, thank you so much for sharing that. Both, I think, some real insights, but that personal story grounded in difficult times, but in happier ones too. I'm going to sort of turn to the room and see who's going to sort of grab the opportunity in front of them. I think that's one of the messages of the day. And I'm looking if there are any disembodied hands going to thrust out of the crowd if they have a question. There's some right at the back. People at the back are finding their courage. This is good.
Okay. Hello everyone. Dear Mr. Ambassador, first of all, thank you for giving us the chance to talk about volunteerism in Kosovo, which for someone may be new, but for someone who do has experience, is something which has influenced their lives, but also have changed their lives, especially for me. I do personally have experience in volunteerism for over 5 years. I've had some initiatives in Kosovo, volunteering, but also dealing with charity, mainly with people who had a need for others. So volunteerism is not only great for helping others, but it's also great of getting to know with others, because it's more about networking with each other. So, but I do have a question regarding the volunteerism in Kosovo, because I've also had some meetings with government officials regarding volunteerism in Kosovo, and the main issue is about that it's not recognized as a work experience. As I said before, I've had some meetings with governmental officials, but still not yet anything has changed. So is there any way of cooperating between British embassy and the government to make any change regarding this issue, or should we still face the same problem we are facing since the war in 1999? Thank you very much.
What do you reckon, Johanna?
Well, I mean, all I can say is that in the middle of the 1990s, I promise you, nobody was talking to the government to try and recognize our volunteering work. And I think that's, look, a piece of paper is, I'm not going to argue against it. In fact, I might even argue against it, because I think it's creating the wrong incentives for you guys. The experience you can get in doing volunteer work, this is why I'm coming back to it can be more important than your studies. Because if you have the right, if you dedicate yourself to something that you care about, and you apply yourself, and you face challenges, and you overcome challenges, and you have to deal with difficult people to make things happen. Of course you have to those are the sort of skills that will help you when you then are in professional positions. So I would say, please, for me, it's the wrong question to ask. Because one thing that people cannot take away from you is the experience that you get from doing volunteer work, from the things you learn about yourself, and then about human nature and about others, that will help you more in life than a piece of paper that you said you did 30 hours of volunteering service. Thank you very much.
Right, any other questions for Johanna before we move on? I wanted to ask you something, actually, if I'm going to take the opportunity, because I'm holding the microphone and no one can wrestle it from me. You described difficult times in the 1990s. Tell me what it felt like to take the first step. You said people felt afraid just to go out of their front door.
Yeah.
So what did it feel like to say, no, I'm going to get involved with this organization, I'm going to do something? How did you get over that?
Look, you have to get out of your front door. I mean, you've got to go to school, you have to live your life. It's amazing with what you get used to. I mean, I would be walking down, like with you, down the street like this, and we would be passing some cafe, and some guys would be there, and I'm talking, having fun with my friends, talking down the road, and this guy would shout, "Hey mala, tisha mala," like, "Hey girl, be quiet." And it was just a normal guy who felt that he could tell me to shut up or be quiet. And it was just, and my reaction was, "Oh, sorry." And then I was thinking, why am I sorry? But you were not sorry, you were just afraid. So very, very scary. And yes, at some point it becomes just something you get on with. You have to live, and you have to kind of make the most from yourself. The reason why we were in the Post-Pessimists were because otherwise it was literally like dying. It was really, really, there was nothing. There was nothing. It was, the books were in Serbian or Serbo-Croatian, the magazines were the same, there was rubbish on the television. There was nothing you can do to find out about the world and to try things. So, I mean, we were a small group. I can't say that it was huge. It grew over time, but you just couldn't stop us. There was that energy, and once we started doing it, I think that's another beautiful thing about being with those who really believe. You didn't feel alone, and that feeling of being together with others who are in the same boat as you, both with the challenges and the passion they're putting into it, it's intoxicating. It's an amazing feeling, and you just keep pushing.
Thank you. I mean, it's telling to me that some of the first people I worked with in the whole of the Balkans were part of the post-pessimists group, maybe some of the younger ones, but younger than us, who were inspired by that example. So, Johanna, I just wanted to thank you again for joining us today and offering an encouragement and an inspiration to others across Kosovo. Thanks a lot. Right, folks, we're 2/3 of the way through, unfortunately. We've got one great speaker, Adrian Davis, from the George Williams Youth Association, coming up. But for now, we're going to have another quick break. If you're on Facebook Live, do stick with us, because Johanna will be out there grabbing people and asking more penetrating questions than I've managed to up on stage. And otherwise, we'll see you in 15 minutes. Thanks all.